The US president has announced a baseline 10% tariff on US imports, with steeper reciprocal levies on goods from a slew of other nations, including us in India, Europe, Japan, and China. And you know why it's a big deal? Because Trump's announcement ends the free trade era that has defined global commerce for decades. A move that now risks higher consumer prices and economic damage as well. But in terms of the numbers, the reciprocal tariffs hit dozens of nations, including some of US's largest trading partners. Donald Trump listed the high tariffs charged by India on American products as he announced reciprocal tariffs on countries across the board, for us declaring a 26% discounted reciprocal tariff. Imports, meanwhile, from the European Union, Japan, and South Korea will be subject to tariffs of about 20% or higher. Imports from Vietnam are subject to a tariff rate of 46%, while Taiwanese imports will face 32% tariffs. Now, you need to keep a keen eye on the fact that it is President Trump's gamble to revive domestic manufacturing, raise revenues to offset tax cut costs, and also push other nations to adhere to non-trade related demands. Trump's reciprocal tariffs decision promises to ruffle feathers worldwide, as we've already seen with the initial responses as nations are bracing for this economic storm. But for further clarity on the matter, I now have the pleasure of being joined by Andrew Leung, who's an international and independent China strategist based in Hong Kong, also joining us on the broadcast at the moment, founder and CEO of US-India Corridor, Angela Chitkara, live from New York. Thank you so much for making time for us and joining us on NDTV. Andrew, to you first. China, one of the United States' largest trading partners, is going to be hit with a new 54% tariff, India with 26% among many others. Would you say we're in the middle of a global trade war now, as many experts have highlighted?
Clearly, this is a completely overturning a new page in trading relationship of the United States with the rest of the world. It's not just targeting a number of large countries or traders like China, but also Americans' allies and friends. It is so-called reciprocal tariffs based on, for example, existing tariffs in a number of countries, even though they are not the largest trading partner of the United States, even though they're friends, which of course could include India, but also it's across the board. Now, Trump believes that tariffs could bring back prosperity to the United States, but this is his rhetoric. And then he thinks that tariffs could bring jobs back to the United States without realizing that, of course, the costs of production of a lot of these products in the United States are no longer competitive. And that's why these productions have been outsourced to other more competitive countries. Now, that's Adam Smith's comparative advantage, but it's going to completely disregard that. And of course, the degree of tariffs is calibrated in relation to what extent that country accounts for imports into the United States. Now, the biggest country imports is, of course, China, Canada, Mexico. But, for example, India, of course, in terms of the relative import is less, and hence the tariffs are relatively less severe compared with other countries. But even a close ally now, Vietnam, as it's pointed out, is a huge tariffs. So I think this is upends the whole world's trading relationship, upends the whole world's supply and value chain, causes inflation around the world because of all the higher costs, and of course resulting in huge costs to American consumers. And then various traders, including Goldman Sachs, have already predicted a high likelihood of an American stagflation, if not immediate recession. And then these tariffs hark back to the time of the so-called Smooth Act, the tariffs back in the 1930s, which deepened the American recession. So that's highly worrying. But at least Trump
Indeed.
believes that the immediate term would result in additional revenue to the United States, would bring back certain jobs to the United States, and would create a golden age of the
Very
United States
pertinent point
economy
there.
dictated by oligarchs and entrepreneurs.
In fact, Angela is also with us now, Andrew. Angela, what role do you think India's diplomatic ties with the US will play in negotiating to reduce these tariffs? As we speak, you think there's any space for compromise? Or is this a major setback for India's trade policy, as many experts are arguing?
Okay, good morning to you. Good morning, India. So I actually think that, the conversations just are ongoing. I think that if you saw how the U.S. markets had responded, they didn't respond well as President Trump was speaking.
Yes.
Because the tariffs were much higher than expected that were imposed. Now, the markets do not like uncertainty. Markets want clarity. And from what I understand, there was very little clarity that was provided. So it puts companies, multinationals, in a very difficult position.
Absolutely.
And just responding very quickly to what you were saying, yes, I think, this is the art of the deal. And Trump will be Trump, and he will continue to negotiate. But what he understands, and CEOs understand, that you have to be really sensitive in the words that you choose and how you be very measured when you're communicating, because the markets are very sensitive. So I think he is just going to continue to negotiate. I think this is shock treatment. I think there's going to be a lot of negotiating that's going to happen behind closed doors. If you noticed, Canada and Mexico, that's been in the news for months, have not been mentioned today.
In fact,
and so, yes, go ahead.
Leaders from Europe to Latin America actually criticizing the tariffs as economically damaging as we speak. Andrew, just want to bring you in for a quick moment here. You think these tariffs will force countries to reevaluate their dependency on the US market, leading to a potential reorganization of global trade alliances and partnerships?
Well, naturally, a number of many countries are already recalibrating their trading and, if you like, even geopolitical relationship with the United States. Not that they would just change cam entirely, but then the people are starting to hedge, and even long-time allies like European countries and Canada and even a closest neighbor like Mexico are already recalibrating their response. On the one hand, like Canada and Mexico, are trying to impose retaliatory measures as a negotiation tactic, if you like, because if you just take everything lying down, and then your national interest could be compromised. Right. Likewise, other countries. So I think that we are seeing the trade shifting to perhaps the global south, and then the realignment of trading relationships even between India and China, between Europe and China. Not that they are going to embrace the panda, but on the other hand, they are going to hedge, they're going to seek out areas of a possible cooperation and possible partnerships.
Well, as we wrap, Angela, so you think these decisions will isolate the US economically?
So what I actually think is I just want to focus for a second on the business community, because it's very much part of the discussion. So multinationals, companies, publicly traded companies, are having difficulty in business planning. And, we're also thinking about, when they're making decisions, it's not like they're making decisions on their own. They're part of a bigger ecosystem of stakeholders. Take, for example, the auto sector and the exposure that the auto sector has to, in markets like Canada, and Mexico. And so now, if we're thinking now about reshoring, nearshoring, friendshoring, that, takes time. But if you think about the US-India relationship, I think naturally multinationals that already have a presence in India and markets like India will continue to expand in India and also rethink their US strategy, which would also include the reskilling of American workforce in the United States.
All right.
It also, take time to recreate these new supply chains and also de-risk. Companies are planning on, thinking about de-risking away from the US. And also diversifying their talent pool. Vietnam was on the list.
Well, many don't have an optimistic view at this moment, though. We are still awaiting for clarity on how this will play out. But Angela and Andrew, I'm afraid I'm completely out of time on this bulletin.
Yes.
Thank you so much for making time for us and joining us on NDTV. Really appreciate it.